I'm Sam Otten, and with me is Jason Book, and in this video we're going to be talking about Batman number 40, which wraps up the Endgame storyline, written by Scott Snyder with art by Greg Capullo. They've been having a pretty epic run on the Batman series since the New 52 launched. This one is their big take on the Joker, which I think is going to be a pretty definitive story kind of for this generation of Batman. So in this one we got the conclusion. There's going to be some spoilers ahead, just as a warning. Some pretty big spoilers, so if you haven't read it already, just that's a heads up. So, Jason, looking back across this whole thing now and coming to its conclusion, what'd you make of it?
I thought it was great. When we first started reading this arc and reviewed the fight with the Justice League at the beginning, all that, we really didn't know where it was going. For it to end up like this, Batman and the Joker meeting their demise apparently at each other's hands, pretty much, kind of harkens back to the storyline in Dark Knight Returns and things like that. Super well done, great art, great storytelling, great writing. Very violent in parts. Did not see this coming. Um, as I said before, the comic nerd in me thinks there's no way these guys are actually dead, but I'm
Hmm.
really interested to see what kind of story avenues this opens up and things they can do. So it looks pretty interesting.
Yeah, I did. I also, like you, did not see it coming that this was going to be like possibly the death of Bruce. And I mean, in the story, it seems pretty clear like that he did die. But then, of course, I'm like you, where it's like, well, somehow he's going to come back.
Mm-mm.
And until they have a body that they bury or something, you kind of always suspect that the person's going to be coming back down the road.
Yep.
But this one, I mean, pretty epic final showdown. It was 10 pages in a row of just Batman and the Joker. And I also thought it was interesting how they took Batman and Joker and actually put them underground for that final showdown because a lot of the other action was happening above in the parade and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was fitting that they actually took it down into the actual depths of the earth for this kind of final showdown. It seemed fitting that it was kind of in that dark place.
Yeah, I would have to agree. It was almost like they were fighting. It wasn't the Bat Cave, but it was cool that moment where Joker was like, I have caves all over too, and things like that. It was pretty, kind of showed yet another way the characters are really, dual versions of each other, right?
Yeah. The art was pretty intense, like you mentioned, with the violence and Greg Capullo. I mean, putting a lot of kind of graphic detail into this final fight, but it's fitting once you saw where it was going that this was, pretty epic one. I thought it was also cool how Scott Snyder wrote in the sort of a monologue for the Joker about him and his, kind of like trying to fight for meaninglessness and trying to like let everybody know that all of this life doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And then the Batman gets his monologue like on the next page where he gets, well, I guess Batman, it's kind of like his monologue is almost told by Alfred at the very end, where
Mm-hmm.
Alfred kind of says, this is what that guy was about, this is what Batman was about, this is his life is this tragedy, but it had a purpose. So I
Mm-hmm.
thought it was cool, like for Scott Snyder, who's I think a really good writer, to really kind of put those monologues in, really tied it up as the epic that it is.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I thought it was well done on so many levels, and really, I think one of these days I'll probably buy them in collected versions. A lot of these arcs, and just really like the guy has just really knocked it out of the park on quite a few occasions. Quite a bit of originality, and a lot of it's tied into a lot of past Batman stories as well. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, and as we saw what happens in the story, what happens next should be just as good.
Yeah. So, what happens next? We kind of got a preview in the Divergence Free Comic Book Day issue. It had 8 pages on Batman, and it picks right up from this story. I thought it had a nice visual link. So, in the denouement section of Batman 40, Alfred and his daughter are sitting, and out the window you see all these bat signals coming up as kind of this tribute for the fallen Batman.
Mm.
And then in the Divergence book on Free Comic Book Day, we see those bat signals are actually come from all these people. And I thought it was cool how they had a lot of the different logos of Batman. I thought that was just a nice visual thread to tie them together.
Yeah, it was very cool. I mean, it's something I like that, Batman's been done a million times in stories. And when you can do something like that, where I can't recall seeing something like that before, it's always nice to have something new and really done well.
Yeah. Now, what'd you make of the rest of that Divergence section on Batman?
Well, as I was saying before to somebody else, the Jim Gordon thing, obviously in the new 52, he's supposed to be a little bit younger. So once I got beyond that, okay, this is supposed to be a Jim Gordon that probably to me is maybe in his early 50s or something like that, late 40s. shaving off the mustache, as I always remember my dad doing that. It always took 10 years off his appearance. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of believable. If he has kind of a military background, they made some jokes about him cutting his own hair and stuff like that. I really like that. The design of the suit is kind of cool, but I really want to see how this is going to work in the stories. And apparently, he's going to fight some new villains and things as well. So
Hmm.
maybe it's going to be quite a different take on Batman, which can be good.
Yeah, the new villains will be interesting to look forward to, and
Hmm.
yeah, how he'll work in that suit. I wonder too. So like the Divergence, I thought did a pretty good job of being a stepping on point for people. So like if they picked it up a free
Hmm.
comic book day and are like, hey, I can actually start on this kind of new era of the
Yeah.
Batman title.
Hmm.
Um, I also wonder if there's kind of some connection to the Gotham TV show, which is focusing on Jim Gordon. You know, earlier on
Mm.
in the TV show, he has a military background. So I wonder if they're kind of almost hoping maybe some Gotham TV fans see that Divergence thing and they might actually kind of follow it in.
Hmm. That's
It's a
yeah.
possibility.
That's a good point. I would think that's pretty interesting. They've always kind of tried to do that with the comic companies, really tie in with what's going on in the movies and whatnot. And I think they really did at times, but not as much as they could have during the Nolan films because those films were so well done for Batman. So this could be a really interesting stepping on point for people.
Yeah. So for me, I think I'm gonna have to look at Endgame all the way from start to finish. I mean, it started off pretty interesting with the Justice League kind of Jokerized, and then it
Yeah,
went through this kind of spreading virus, and now it comes to this epic conclusion. It's almost like amazing that so much happened in those 6 issues, but
yeah.
I really want to go back now that I know that it really is this epic finish, possibly the end of Bruce Wayne,
Mm.
at least temporarily.
Yeah, I mean, like when we started reading it, we really didn't know where it was going, and I totally thought that the title Endgame was too on the nose for it to actually be like
Yeah.
a final Batman arc. And I also thought I kind of envisioned Snyder and Capullo going like at least 50 issues, maybe even 100 or something crazy like that because they're just so solid and it's always
Mhm.
steady, great work. So if it was somebody else doing this and it seemed kind of gimmicky as a new way to put Batman into armor and a different character, probably would think it was cheesy, but I gotta say what they're doing really works.
Mhm. What my one very minor complaint was on the covers. So
Mm,
Endgame 1 through 4, it had on the cover Endgame Part 1 and then Part 2, Part 3, Part 4.
yeah.
And then for some reason on Part 5 and Part 6 they just dropped those off. And like part of me I
Oh,
like the consistency where you
yeah.
have these covers and I'm getting them as, single issues.
Yeah.
I don't know why they would just leave that off Part 5 and Part 6. So
I thought it
that's
said
my very
Endgame
minor complaint.
conclusion.
But
I
once I
guess.
open the book, it's been great.
Yeah, so it didn't say Endgame conclusion, eh?
Or yeah, or part 5 or part it just stopped at part 4 even though like
Weird.
inside we know that it's Endgame part 5 and then Endgame part 6. Yeah, so
And they weren't the variant covers that you got?
I'm pretty sure it's the standard one,
Yeah,
but
that's kind of a small thing, but I know what you're saying. I mean, that's kind of weird, right?
yeah, and I think a lot of comic book collectors they kind of like to have matching sets or
Oh
that
yeah.
kind of thing. So
Consistency is important.
all right, well we'll have to see what comes up next with old Commissioner Gordon in the bat suit. So definitely a new era coming up starting after this Convergence event.
Yeah, it should be really interesting. I think it's got a lot of potential, and it'll cool to see what kind of supporting cast falls along for the ride.
All right, great.
All right, good talking to you.